From the wide-open prairies to pixel-sized worlds, this is IndieQuest in the Prairies with Ali Secor. Hi, and welcome to another episode of IndieQuest in the Prairies. Today we're here with Shaun from High Level Studios, who's the president and creative director and a bunch of other things, I'm sure.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, Ali.
Welcome.
I'm the creative director of High Level Studios, so a VR company in Lethbridge, Alberta. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that, because I think when someone hears a VR company, a VR game development company in Lethbridge, Alberta, they think, what? I mean, how long have you been established? What do you guys do?
We've been established for about 2 years. It's a fairly small outfit right now. Basically, two core members, myself and my brother Aaron, who kind of head up, the studio, and we're the founders. And then we've worked with other kind of individuals as contractors or as contract employees over our lifespan. So we're still a very small kind of sort of company, but we're just building up in Lethbridge. So.
Right, brothers. Hey, how's it working with your brother?
It's great. Overall, Aaron and I are twins, and so we have kind of like a sort of an established form of communication, which always helps in these kind of projects.
Right.
So honestly, it's been I think that's been the ideal scenario, honestly, because it's always good to have someone who can sort of understand how you think at a deeper level, and it just helps with sort of difficult decisions.
Right.
Yeah.
So how did the idea come about? Was it just you guys chatting about, hey, it would be cool to make a game, or was this always kind of a dream, something you had planned?
It wasn't really something we had planned, I guess in terms of the long term. It is definitely something that we kind of sort of sat down together and decided we wanted to do. Because my background, primarily in terms of my education, has been, audio engineering, but also music composition. So I always liked working within the creative world itself, but and I always loved games, and that's where I draw a lot of my inspiration when it came to my music as well. But yeah, I guess I went down that path, went and got my bachelor's, then went to Toronto, got my master's. But then after that, when COVID kind of hit, I just realized that throughout that entire period, I've been dabbling with programming in some fashion. One way or another. Usually it was for live music, some live music performances, augmented instruments like a augmented saxophone or that kind of stuff, or sort of playing around that world with but not really fully diving into understanding programming to the level of what a game engine requires. And so during COVID, I just kind of decided to just learn C++ because I wanted to learn Unreal Engine. Yeah, I literally just took 3 months because I was kind of stuck at home, and so I was just wanting to basically go learn as much about that language as I could, and then kind of started tying it into a game engine and sort of self-taught myself, and I guess in that way. So that was, and so in terms of getting to game development, that was my kind of general path. In terms of actually starting the studio with Aaron, it was mostly just coming down to the fact that we love VR and we just wanted to see more cool experiences with it, and so we were kind of brainstorming ideas, and the fact that I was becoming more competent with working with Unreal Engine, we decided we wanted to actually put something together and really have a go at creating a full game and really kind of tackle that together, because we've always worked well in other creative endeavors, and so so it's something we wanted to kind of just honestly go after and sort of attempt.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. I find a lot of indie studios now, rather than being started kind of as a business first, it's like some hobbyists, some friends, some family in this case, say, I want to dabble, I want to play with this, and it kind of snowballs into a studio in this case, or sometimes just a ship title and things like that. And COVID especially, I've met a few people who were like, I had time and I've always wanted to explore this, and so why not, Yeah. Did you, before the whole High Level Studios idea came about though, Were you guys just like dabbling, making some projects on the side? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I was particularly. I guess Aaron on the business side. I guess has dealt a lot on like the I guess on the business development side, but as well as I guess level design and some of the art as well. So like and I'd say I spent more time in like in the world of developing games than he did, but it was a pretty small amount. I was mostly joining kind of smaller indie teams just through like Discord channels, and
Right.
I started out mostly just working as a composer and audio designer. And so like I never worked as a programmer with another team. I kind of started that on my own, mostly because of frustrations with other teams where I was just like not particularly happy with what was happening, and I just wanted to actually like, you know, have full control and really just go after a vision that I was happy with. So
Right.
so yeah, so I'd say like during COVID, after I learned Unreal Engine and was like doing that kind of stuff, I was joining other kind of like game teams for about 2.5, 3 years, just
Oh, wow.
just doing that kind of stuff, and very small teams, nothing really crazy. I'm not sure.
Still, though.
Yeah, very few of those things actually got to shipping. So
You're right, yeah. But I mean, that's true for a lot of things, right? Shipping a game is an art in and of itself. It's a craft in itself. It's one thing to dabble, but to bring it across the finish line is so hard, right? So your current project, because it's on the path to shipping, was it one of these projects that you were kind of dabbling with and then it snowballed and you're like, I don't know, I think we could do this. I think we could finish it. Or from the get-go where you're like, okay, this is the thing. We're going to sit down and we're going to go all the way with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it started off where it did kind of have that initial start and then snowballed. I feel like I was working on it because we were working on it. We had this idea and we're like, yeah, we're going to tackle this, but we weren't really going the full, like, you know, setting up a studio front. And I feel like that time frame was about probably 3 or 4 months of development. And that was more so just kind of getting, I guess playing around with mechanics that we liked, going through that kind of process, and then we're like, okay, we think we have a good idea here. Let's start, and with, of course, like sort of iterations and changes along the way with things we learned through our development, because we kind of went through the first year, then got our demo out, went to a handful of different events and conferences to show the game, and now we're kind of making that push to final release. Yeah.
Right. Well, tell us a little bit about the game first of all, but also I'm interested to hear like at the nitty-gritty level, like the literal sitting in a room playing with these mechanics, seeing what comes of it kind of thing. Tell us both how the game was born from that, but what the game even is.
Sure, yeah. So let's define the game a bit so it's not so nebulous. So the VR game that we're developing is called Fortune on the Frontier. We're developing it for the Meta platform, so that's the Quest 2, 3, 3S VR headsets. And the game itself is essentially an action-adventure VR platformer. Where you're exploring an abandoned mine, which is, I guess, an abandoned mine in Western Canada, and essentially trying to find different treasures in the space, avoid traps, and then find like a core treasure within this level sequence, and then escaping with your life. Essentially, that's basically the general flow of the game.
Right.
So on the single player side, there's that, but another element of it was developing what we're calling asymmetrical multiplayer, where you can have multiple people in VR and then multiple people on mobile devices, kind of competing against each other, having the VR players explore this abandoned mine, gather treasure, try to get out and survive, and then the mobile players are controlling animals that are attacking the VR players.
Right.
So things like birds, gophers, cougar, bison, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so we have kind of this sort of story single player aspect, but we also have this asymmetrical multiplayer, which is more a way to kind of connect people who are really into VR, and then people who have like friends and family who are really into VR but want to play together but don't necessarily want to wear the headset. So that's kind of
because it's a big limitation of the headset, right? Like people always talk about how either when they're the one wearing it, they feel kind of isolated. Like people can't see what they see. You can cast it to a screen maybe, but it's still not quite the same. So it's sort of one person at the same time. But by adding this phone element, now the people sitting on the couch watching are part of the game.
Yeah, exactly. And and I find like in general, VR can be pretty isolating, especially when you're the only one in the house that has it, and it's expensive to have multiple VR headsets for like your entire family to play together. So we thought having that element would allow for some more interesting interactions where you could have like mobile players kind of like teaming up against the VR player, and you have that really kind of like visceral like sort of connection between the two. And the idea of having mobile players that actually exist in the world and control things, like actually control like creatures and can directly be in the VR player's face, rather than being like a godlike view where you're just kind of hovering over everything and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and I remember at the High Level Innovation Conference, we played it up on stage, and it was so much fun as a phone player. There was another person, and we were both birds, I think, and we were teaming up and flying around each other, and we'd run into each other and say, hey, did you see him? Where'd he go? And chase him down. And there's this very like spatial kind of element. Plus then we could hear whoever was in the headset screaming as these birds are coming at their face.
Exactly. And there's definitely like it's a very like sort of engaging antagonistic force, I think, when the person's controlling it right there. But they also have a very different move set than you. So it's not like a direct like person to person. It's this kind of nebulous force. Those interactions I think have kind of sort of sustained us throughout our development, because every time we bring it to shows, especially when we've gotten the asymmetrical running, there's always that element of like a kid being in the VR headset and then the parents just trying to like basically just mess with them. And like and it's something that always seems to like bring people, I guess sort of like it always seems to be very exciting for I guess for the family, and it kind of breaks down I guess instead of just like you're demoing a game at a conference, it's this very kind of like awkward situation to really get into a game, versus they're actually like sort of like getting engaged and really like being brought into the experience. And even at very kind of early versions of the build, where I'd say like there were definitely improvements that we decided to make that improve the experience overall. But I think that baseline was strong enough that we decided that it was kind of our one, a core element we wanted to follow.
Right.
Yeah.
So that idea then was there from the beginning. It wasn't something that like it was a VR game and then you decided or saw like people sitting on the couch and decided it would be fun to do that, or was this just like from the beginning you wanted something that brought people together?
From the beginning, we were there were a handful of VR games on the Meta platform that did support like one VR player and then other people on mobile devices. And so the idea isn't necessarily a new one. But we did want to tackle that because we just thought it was more interesting than just doing the single player game, just because we were just thinking about how we could experiment and push it a bit further. I think, but I guess early on, that was definitely a core element for our design. And the first time we showed the game at a conference was using the asymmetrical. It wasn't just a single player experience. So,
right.
I was in there from the very beginning, which I think definitely made certain parts of development more difficult, but also kind of helped us build the structure underneath that could support a system like that.
Yeah. Well, and that's quite the undertaking for, I guess, not your first like personal project, but your first studio project, to not only do a VR game, which in itself can have unique challenges, but now you've got this mobile element and they have to play together and it's multiplayer.
Yeah, that's gonna be online and it's got to support, like net replication. Yeah, absolutely. It's I know it's one of those things where we definitely could have gone with this.
Yeah, but what you have is unique, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Especially in a somewhat flooded games market today, it really stands out. I assume there's not a lot of games doing this sort of asymmetric multiplayer thing in the Quest ecosystem.
No, I think I can't really pinpoint exactly why, because I think the concept is strong. I think it might just be a pain to develop and test. And that's been my experience with like specifically just testing it's a lot slower. When I'm specifically testing like the two playing together, it's like it can be a lot to actually like sort of, I guess actually debug certain things, very specific situations when you're dealing with such different platforms. And then of course the translation from Android to Apple, which we're still kind of working through too, and so that's still kind of a work in progress to get that
right.
Figuring out that transition so that we can cover I guess the iOS platform as well. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of people call like mobile a platform, the same way they call PC a platform.
Yeah.
But it's not. There's a lot of different architectural setups. There's iOS and Android in this case, but between them, there's also phones with different capacities and things like that. So that must be interesting to try to test and adapt to.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, in one way, it's a good pairing because the biggest difficulty with VR development is optimization, and mobile shares a similar thing for a slightly different reason. Obviously, you can have very powerful, phones that can run games at a pretty high level, like higher level than what necessarily the Quest could do by itself. But you also have a huge garden variety of $100, $200 phones where it's like they're far below the Quest, and it's like, okay, how the heck do I optimize it here? I thought VR was hard. It is hard. But it's also like now I have to keep that in mind for these kind of low-level phones as well. So it's and so in that way you're always thinking about optimization, which is good. So they pair nicely together there. But it does add more complexity rather than just getting the build running.
Right. When you mentioned testing, which I think a lot of people kind of assume, like you either pay, which is true, sometimes you pay like a third-party service to do testing, but that can get expensive for a really small team. Or you have internal QA, which is bigger studios can generally afford that, but the indies, typically there's no like one QA person. Everybody wears so many hats, right? You're a two-man show effectively, plus contractors. So what is your approach to testing, especially given that it's multiplayer, so you need to have multiple people, I assume, playing?
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that?
I usually start out with just, first of all, making sure that make sure that the offline logic is solid first. Because if something's broken, it's different when it's something broken on the replication side versus it's just a logical issue where you just need to fix it. So I usually just start with the offline first. Then I usually isolate it to online. So if I'm working with a VR code, specifically online VR, and then from there I basically run a server with VR and mobile together, and then to see how it's behaving.
Right. So there's some tooling you can use to kind of offload the testing a bit, like so you can test multiplayer at one station, kind of thing.
A little bit, but when you're kind of the main person doing the testing, it's hard to it's hard to divide your attention. So it does end up being kind of a stage by stage process, I think.
Well, and there's technical testing, but then there's design testing. Like I know I've been lucky to kind of see your guys' project evolve over the years and change based on feedback, but you only get that feedback when you've got the users playing it, right? You've got the butts in the seats and the different perspectives. So where do you guys get the bulk of that kind of feedback? Is it these events, or are you
this primarily these events, yeah. Just because like the situation, especially when we're testing the VR and the mobile together and not just being single player VR, which we have done testing for that. It is easier in those situations where you have lots, especially these events that have a lot of families. It's a lot easier to get a group of people that are more willing to test it together.
Play together.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and it's kind of a fun thing. We're usually, our demo is obviously like free because we're looking for testings, and so a lot of kids are drawn to it because they want to play VR because that's the big thing for them. And then their parents like, I can play too. I can but I can directly interact with them and mess around with them. It's like, I don't know, it just seems to work well. And I feel like that side of it has really helped with our design philosophies. And it's drastically changed how the mobile player changed, because the animals were not our initial idea at all.
Right.
There was no animal idea at all for a good, like, honestly, I guess leading up to the first demo, that idea kind of started when Aaron, I guess, came to me, and when we were thinking of like different like trap ideas, because the idea of the mobile player initially was that they were just going to basically control like what room the VR player goes to next, and then control traps. So it could have spikes fall, have a crane fall, that kind of thing. But then Aaron, but before this first show, which was GameCon, Aaron brought up the idea that we should have like this little kind of like bird in a cage, and then you can sort of open the cage and then control them, and you hit the VR player once, and if you knock them off of something, then like the bird despawns, and that's like one of your traps you use.
Right.
But when we brought it to the show, that's what all the people wanted to play on the mobile device. So I can control the bird, and that was 100%. That stole the show. Everything else was like
bing.
Yeah, everything else was like whatever. It's like this isn't that interesting. This is kind of boring. But the bird, a very basic mechanic set where you just tap to flap your wings, you fly around, you gather some energy by flying through rings, Superman 64 style, and then just basically doing a dive bomb attack right into the VR player. So when they're climbing, if they're climbing, they just let go of whatever they're climbing onto and they fall, and and that way you can effectively kill the VR player. But I guess but that was the side that was most engaging to people, and so after that we essentially reevaluated and just kind of fully went into this like sort of like a thing where like we're not going to worry about the mobile player controlling traps anymore. They're not gonna like they'll still help determine, I guess, what room comes next through a voting system, but their interaction with the VR player is going to be entirely through these animal avatars. And so that was the big shift. I'd say like VR in general, there's some improvements that we made, but the core concept kind of remained the same. The mobile player changed drastically after that first show because we just saw where people were actually getting excited was that. And instead of just being nice at a trade show and saying, "Oh, this is kind of cool," and then moving on. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, it's that whole follow the fun thing, right? Like if people go, "Oh, this is great," and they only do the bird because the bird is fun, lean into it, right? Yeah. Well, and often I find first-time developers are hesitant to do that because there's this initial idea, and the thought is like, well, we just make that better, eventually it will click. But sometimes the first direction you go is not the right direction, right?
Yeah, and it can be hard to like to abandon so much work because it's like because like for everyone else like it's like, oh, this mechanic isn't very fun, but it's like but for everyone else it's like but for you it's like, oh, this thing I spent 3 months working on isn't fun. Oh, I guess I better just light a match to the house I just built and just watch it go. Because which is hard, but I think it's in general just important, and I think it's very important. I'm just on my end in terms of development, I'm always just hoping that we're actually heeding those signs enough that we aren't missing something critical. And so just being aware of that and seeing like not necessarily like shifting your direction like all the time, but just being open enough to like sort of take those cues and actually apply them and test them. And I think in general for gaming, like for game development, well, at least on my very limited experience and knowledge, it seems like if something's fun, it doesn't take long for you to realize it's fun.
Right.
It's like you don't really need the graphics. Like, you don't even necessarily need the graphics there to be in full. Like you just need to. It just needs to feel engaging and sort of click in your head and make you want to basically return to it without being like forced to like it's a chore. Like I think.
Right.
So I feel like being aware of that is very interesting. I know that's a big thing with just game development in general. I think like indies suffer from it, but AAA studios absolutely suffer from it.
Yeah, well, because there's that fear of risk, right? The loss of it's a bit of a sunk cost fallacy, the losing of the time, but also there's this idea that you can just know what someone wants and then execute on it, but often you have to like listen to your project, right? Like if people are coming to your booth and playing and going, "Oh, that's nice," and walking away, you can kind of tell that it's
it's not nice. Let's say like people don't want to be rude. You will run into some people who will be brutal.
Oh, for sure.
And that's totally fine. Like I'm like again like if you I don't know if you come to any of our booths or stuff and like want to be brutal, be brutal. That's actually very helpful. But I think in general like most people are just kind of nice, especially in Canada. They're very nicely polite, but if they're not engaging with something, you can tell. There's a whole, and I think that's the response we're always looking for, where it's like if people aren't sort of like having like a knee-jerk reaction where they're like sort of like automatically responding in a way like through like through their whole body, then they're probably not actually fully enjoying the game. They're probably just thinking they think it's interesting from an intellectual level, but they aren't connecting to it emotionally. So
yeah. Well, and sometimes they don't even realize it, right? Like it's on you as the developer to be able to suss that out and to also be willing. Like one thing I found really interesting with you guys is you were willing to show your game so early and publicly at events. Oftentimes people hold it really close to their chest until it's pretty, like the visuals are almost more important, but by then it's harder to pivot.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a lot of sunk time. And that's the thing that's very like, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know, it's for being such a malleable, like platforming like digital art and stuff, it's like, it's not very flexible once you've gotten like, I've gotten this model made and it's like one requirement changes and suddenly it's like a whole bunch of work gone, right? It's like, if you take like a character mesh and you need something very specific with the eyes, it's like, oh, suddenly like, oh crap, now this whole model doesn't work and I have to start from scratch. And
you've wasted all that time potentially, or maybe wasted is a strong word, but certainly you have to
Yeah,
track
it's
now,
it's
right?
it's more work you have to do. It's more work that
Yeah.
you didn't think you had to do because you thought you had it. Yeah, it's fair, and I feel like I think that mentality is just we wanted to keep a somewhat like strict schedule, like not to the level where we're like kind of like sacrificing quality. We've had to like push back dates to make the game we want to make, but we also just wanted to actually be committed with our time and be like okay, we want to spend like max like 3 to 4 years on this game because we want to because if there's a game that's worthwhile, we can probably get it done in that time frame.
Right.
Anything else is just us meandering and not committing to an idea. And I mean, like I'm not in my 20s anymore. Like I'm 33, I guess, of the date of this recording, and so like I just want to create what art I can and not necessarily spend a decade just worrying about this one piece that could ultimately not be that great.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right. Well, and that's worth mentioning too is you guys, like a lot of indies, are, I assume, not full-time on this project? Like you have other day jobs, you have other commitments and things.
That's fair. On our end, my brother certainly does. I've been working full time on this for pretty much since I guess for about 2 years now, and that's only been possible with the support of our our family and friends who've been kind of helping along the way, and Aaron, of course, who's been also supporting me while I'm spending a lot of time. And so I try to take that time seriously because I know it's been sort of gifted to me in a way.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's something I think a lot of people think when you start a studio, when you have a name and you're incorporated or whatever, all of a sudden you're full-time and you operate like these larger studios that have publisher funding. But oftentimes you don't. You're having to juggle these other things or make sacrifices so someone on the team can be full-time and the other person is part-time or whatever.
Yeah.
How does that impact because you said you sat down, you said 3 to 4 years we ship, right? How does that impact your timeline? Are you sort of accounting for that? Are you just trying to burn the candle at both ends? And
Probably burning the candle at both ends more so. I mean, I feel like it's just like on my end, like if I'm working full time. I mean, there's one side of it where I just really enjoy making the game, and it's what it's like. I mean, I really love programming, and it's just like something I can spend like very large swaths of time on, and so I can burn the candle at both ends, but it doesn't feel that bad because it can feel bad in other ways. But I'm not bored,
Right,
and that's
yeah.
honestly kind of what bothers me most is when I'm bored. But if I'm if I'm moving forward, making progress, and there's specific kind of milestones I'm hitting, then I just kind of then my own kind of my eternal game loop kind of goes where I'm just kind of hitting the next thing, and I'm like, and I have that sense of accomplishment. So I mean, I guess on my end, it's more so just been like, I don't know, I guess working whenever I can, trying to carve out some very specific isolated times for family. But if I'm not with family, I'm working out the game essentially. That's been my life essentially.
yeah, and it can be easy to do that, right? Because you're on your own schedule.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I have that control, and I can go down to my office work and put as much time as I can and whatever energy I have, and I guess into it, which is very nice. Like I mean, I feel like overall, it's one of those things where like I'd say I'm very much like a still an amateur in a lot of things when it comes to game development, but by kind of forcing myself to learn, I feel like I've been able to sort of develop develop myself and really and really like make something that I'm pretty darn happy with that I never could have done 5 years ago. So
right. Well, and you guys are pretty deep into. I mean, there's a light at the end of the tunnel now, right?
Yeah.
Like we're looking at maybe launching within the next year. So has this kind of become routine, or do you still find yourself like, I know burnout is a big thing, especially with indies who work on their own kind of schedule, because you could work for 12 hours straight if you want to, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you found like a pace though that you think is going to carry you through to the end?
Yeah, I think so. Because I was definitely. There's definitely phases where I definitely get hit with like the burnout. I feel like I go for a bit, then I get hit by it, so I have to slow down a little bit, and then I get back into it and I go. So it's a bit hard to predict. On my end, it's mostly just been, especially when I have like dedicated family time, particularly with my daughter. As long as I keep those intact, I'm usually okay, because then I can because that time I can really kind of sort of like decompress and just focus on something that's not a game, or even myself specifically. And so I guess on that end, I guess I have been getting better at it, but there are definitely points where I have to push it harder and then I feel it. So it's
Right.
yeah, it's a juggling act. It's not perfect, but I'm slowly getting better at it, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how game production, like when you talk to people about it or look at stuff on YouTube, it focuses so much on the game. But game production is just as much about like managing yourself and your life and your ability, like at least at the indie level, there's so much more to it beyond just like the production schedule of the project, right? It's people making games.
Yeah, like and I mean, like, making a game is a marathon, it's not a sprint, so you can't really, you have to accept the fact that that you are going to run out of energy, but how are you going to sort of manage that? And so yeah, I think that's, yeah, absolutely. It's not a quick turnaround for a game, so it's a large commitment, and you have to stay committed, or else then it just falls apart. Which I mean, I find is most creative things. It's very easy to get an idea. It's very hard to actually deliver and actually execute effectively.
Yeah. Well, and I find there's always there's the initial idea and the prototyping phase where everyone's all excited and there's like big progress really early, and generally people are enthusiastic in that phase. And then you kind of hit that big, long middle stretch of development where it's about consistency, like you said, and kind of sticking to it. And feels like a lot of projects get lost in that leg of the journey because it's just, it can be monotonous isn't the word I'm looking for, but like it's really about consistency and sticking with it. You've lost the flurry and fervor of early production, but you're also not necessarily close enough to development to like be marketing and seeing people's reactions, or not development, shipping, like have that marketing beat or have the community building or have people hands-on. You're kind of often in the dark, just going down to your basement every night to work on stuff. But you guys, which again I find really interesting, is that you showed it so early and you got people's kinds of like hands on it and that sort of thing. I remember you mentioning how like fun it was to see people play it, even at an early stage. Yeah. Like it's energizing, it gets you excited. And now that you're on the tail end of development, do you find you're getting a second wind, or are you sort of just like, you've been keeping the pace for years, so we're just keeping the pace now?
Well, it definitely ebbs and flows. I feel like depending on what we're working on, the idea of being bogged down can hurt. I guess the weight of this kind of middling area can be a lot more crushing. I feel like when it comes down to things like sort of nitpicking, especially with optimization of levels, for me is the thing that can really like, because you're looking at the same thing, but you're also kind of like doing very small, feels like small adjustments to, I guess, to reach like a frame rate sort of like requirement. But it's one of those things where it's like, and that end, it's also tricky because like what gamers will respond to. I mean, they'll respond to frame rate obviously because of comfort, but only so much for your game. It's like you can't just put a scene. It's like, oh, this runs at 72 frames per second, and they're like, bravo, this is the best game. No, it's like you need to have that content there, and balancing that back and forth with us, especially. It's like getting the levels out, but also like tackling some, tackling these optimization bugs while introducing things to make the player experience better has been kind of a tricky thing. Because we recently did a fairly big push where we introduced our own kind of dynamic lighting system into our game, which actually you haven't seen yet. But it was actually a system that that started being developed as a shader by our artist, who I guess he did a lot of art for the game, and more or less worked with us for about a year. His name is Zach, and he essentially developed a shader that could basically sort of fake dynamic lighting by more or less calculating point lights and applying it to materials. And that's because we decided to go after that because Unreal Engine's dynamic lighting system just doesn't run on the Quest at a high enough frame rate for it to work. And so we kind of abandoned the idea, but we had the shader that Zach made. I hadn't implemented it for a while because we were working on other things. And we're like, okay, we'll try and get this. But then but then the sort of last sort of like month and a half, we just decided we want to add this visual flair to the game. We want to have an actual lantern that players carry around, and the rest of the area is in darkness, but you can actually see, and you have this full
so you
thing.
need the dynamic.
And so we got it in, and so I took that concept that Zach made, developed the system behind it to handle like 4-point lights in the scene. So like very, very restricted, but allowed for VR players to have a lamp with them. And then we blended it with static lighting, so you could have like still apply that kind of brightness adjustment on already lit, materials and bring it back. But that side of it, which basically added, probably 2.5-3 weeks to development time. Obviously we'll pushed our deadline out, but added so much to the experience. And so like we're kind of balancing between that kind of optimization side, but trying to get these improvements that will just help people be more immersed in our game. And so
Right.
and so yeah, that one in particular was a really big one, and I'm very proud that we got that done and actually got it working on a technical side where it's running 72 frames per second. And
Yeah.
not awful in terms of performance.
You're having to like prioritize things that are going to be high impact and hopefully like low cost in terms of time and stuff. Like,
yeah, exactly. Which is, that's kind of the thing. It's like there's so many rabbit holes you can go down, and I feel like that's also been something we've been kind of learning about, is just how to just trying to figure out like what's most important. And honestly, like the trade shows and people playing testing the game, I was like, honestly, is a pretty big source of that too. It's hard to be objective about that when you're the only person seeing it for a long period of time. So, yeah.
Well, and you guys have a demo out, right, on the Quest Store?
Yeah, we have it on the Quest Store. That demo in particular, it works well. It's not the multiplayer demo; it's just a single-player demo that goes through kind of the initial passages of the mine, which is pretty interesting because mechanically, there's one kind of huge mechanic that we decided to make for one level. It took me probably 2 months for me to make it. It was a procedural minecart track in VR that you could actually like switch at different junction points and have actual like other carts, full physics, kind of like, but all mathematical kind of physics calculations, not using Unreals, but just calculating where they are on the track, which made it a lot cheaper. But that side of it, we have the single player demo that kind of leads up to this like sort of like climactic hand car kind of escape where you have a full cave collapsing behind you and have this dust kind of like,
cool,
like
very dramatic.
Yeah, it's great, like and that kind of thing. And so it's like that's on the store, and people have been enjoying it on that end. But it's also one of those things where like we've made so many improvements, particularly to the VR player. I'm excited to people to try that version of it, especially with the dynamic lighting. So it's I don't know. So yeah, sorry. We do have a demo out. We do have a demo out. It is on the Meta Store for free, just under Fortune on the Frontier demo. But it's but yeah, we seem to be gaining a small audience from that.
Nice.
Yeah.
So like uptake's been pretty good. Lots of downloads.
Pretty good. Yeah. Right now we're sitting at about 6,000 active players, which isn't bad. I think in general, being a smaller studio, I guess just kind of finding the people who are drawn to the concept, I guess is important, and we have gotten some good feedback on that end as well. So it's been a good experience, and I'm glad we got that demo out there early rather than kind of just holding it to ourselves and basically staying silent to the rest of the world, because it's
right.
I don't. In the end, we're making a game that we want people to connect to, and if they're not connecting to it after we spent 3 years on it, then that's pretty tough.
It's a little scary.
Yeah, it's a pretty tough pill to swallow, and it's one of those things where if the game is in a good enough state where people can actually play it and enjoy it and it's stable, then I think it's good to get out there. Most people are first impressions matter, but it's also pretty dangerous to be flying blind throughout your entire development.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and nowadays, especially for like funding and things like that, like publishers, I know they want to see that you're out there marketing early, right? Mm-hmm. So having that demo is nice. You're on the store, your logo's there, right? You've already established the pipeline of getting onto the Quest Store, which I'd like to get you to actually walk through that process a little bit, because I don't think people know what goes into that, but you're also building an audience, right? And it used to be that you would develop your game kind of behind closed doors. You would go to a publisher, and then the publisher would accept your game or not. They'd help you develop it, and then they would do the marketing and community building. But now that's kind of handled by the developers themselves. They're expected to build these communities. So have you guys been doing much of that outside of the Quest Store, or is the Quest Store kind of your main?
The Quest Store's been the primary one. We have been going through another kind of VR platform called SideQuest, which links back to a lot of the Meta platform, which has been very helpful, honestly, because early on it was very hard to get traffic that way, but a little bit of time on SideQuest kind of helped kind of bridge the channels a bit. Nice. It also makes it when you search Fortune on the Frontier on Google, it pops up in multiple places, which is also helpful for algorithmic.
Good visibility.
Yeah, exactly. It provides some pretty good visibility. On that end, I think in terms of the marketing side and like trying to build up an audience, I mean that's something where we've been more or less doing it at the shows and then with our demo. We have a Discord channel for Fortune on the Frontier, which is actually tied into the demo itself that you can access. But on that end, I feel like more people are just kind of enjoying the experience playing the game, but not necessarily connecting directly back to us, which is something we're kind of navigating right now as well.
Right.
So, yeah.
Like how to get those people sort of into the ecosystem, or.
Yeah, exactly. I guess into the ecosystem. The nice thing is that people downloading a demo on the Meta Store essentially acts like a wish list. So once they download the demo, we can send out a ping once the game's out, saying, hey, the full game's out, and it'll like pop up on like they're on the Meta app, like on your phone or on the headset itself if you're wearing a headset. So so overall, I'd say releasing a demo on there is actually a good way to kind of build up that wish list count without it just being just like a flat page where you're building it. So I'm not sure if Steam is anything like that specifically, where a demo can be tied back into like a notification system.
Yeah.
I know that might be unique to Meta's platform, but yeah, more or less that's kind of been our marketing push, and I think it's since we're trying to bring the game up to a level where we're happy with it. I feel like we're hesitant to share a lot of like specific art or specific levels because we really want to bring it up to that level,
right?
Especially with the lighting. Yeah.
Well, and I know like. There's that saying, I have no idea who it came from, but the 80-20 rule, that like 80% of something comes from 20% of the work. But I find when it comes to polishing, that last 20% can make all of the difference, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like your game works, it's fun, it's functional, but just adding those little things like the lantern, right, can make such a huge difference, especially on that first impression.
Yeah. Exactly, and people get very annoyed by small things. Like gamers, not necessarily just gamers. Everyone gets annoyed by very small things in their life that disrupt them just enough to kind of trigger in their brain that they don't like it. And so there's a lot of those kind of things, which again, getting other people to play your game helps. I guess to sort of figure out. And so I feel like that level of polish is almost, I mean, graphically that's important, but that side is also very important on the VR side when it's so physical. If something just isn't working physically, like just a slight thing, then that can also turn a lot of people off of a game. So it's yeah, I agree that polish is very important, and it's one of those things where just like, well, I always hope we're doing enough of it. Yeah. It's kind of never ending. You can polish it till
exactly.
Yeah.
Like that's so hard. That's another thing I think that commonly gets people with shipping is there's nobody telling you, okay, stop, pencils down, we're done.
Yeah.
Right? Like you never know where that line is. You kind of have to accept there are certain things that aren't going to be as good as they could be. You could work on the same game for 20 years and that would be true, right? So how do you find you guys are like managing that? Are you just imposing a deadline on yourselves and saying like, okay, this month, let's say, is what we're going to target for release. So we need to prioritize because we only have 3 months or whatever left.
Yes, we always start out that way.
Yeah, okay.
That's the thing. There's always the ideal side of it, and I think that stage, even though you kind of can laugh it off, it's like it is still very important just to set that like a clear goal. And if it changes, it changes. But if you're earnestly actually tackling that goal and really pushing to that deadline. If there's a good reason for it to be pushed, then it gets pushed. Like, I don't know, like, and that's sort of a thing on our end. Like character animation took a lot more time than we thought in terms of like getting our models working well in VR and like getting the inverse kinematic setup, but also just like adding more things like very specific climbing animations and grip animations. I guess that added a lot of time. It pushed our schedule back a bit, but it needed to be there, so we had to get it done. And so I'd say like in terms of like when we decide enough is enough is more or less a collective decision I guess between Aaron and I, where we're just kind of like going through it and we decide, okay, this is enough, or let's table this for now, let's move on to this next thing that we need to do. Maybe we'll have a greater insight on this specific spot, like say this, like one visual effect in like our voting room, for example. It's like that's where we go, okay, this works, this gets the point across, it's pretty good. Let's go work on something else, then we'll come back to it, and then we might have another idea here that we can do. But just sitting in a spot and just tapping a pencil on your desk and going like, for hours isn't helping anyone. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. I always think of it as like game development is less this linear process of like blueprint to like, I don't know, scaffolding to whatever, to use the analogy of a house, and then you do the interior and blah. It's not so linear. It's almost like up-resing an image in a way.
Yeah.
Where like you have this foggy vision, and then it gets a little clearer as you add these layers, and then you start to move on, and then you realize, oh, this part of the image is really important and could use more of my attention. This part, maybe not so much.
Yeah, exactly.
And hopefully by the end you have a pretty picture and not a mess of pixels.
Yeah, exactly. And then everything in the image that image is understandable to the person. It's not like something that's only understandable to you. And yeah. And then you hope the picture doesn't fall off the wall or shatter because the back frame board is too fragile. I don't know, whatever analogy we can make to.
There are so many things that could go wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
So jumping back in the timeline a little bit, I want to get a little bit of insight into how you guys got onto the Quest store, because that can be a little, maybe messy's not the word, but there are steps to it. There are things you have to do to get certified to get onto the store and all of that. Yeah. So what was that process like? I mean,
the process itself, the process does have a fair amount of steps, but it is pretty well documented. I'd say I guess I'm specifically on there. I guess I'm on Meta's forums. Anything I mention is basically linked back to a document there, and a lot of it comes down to just performance guidelines for the app, specific, and so things like maintaining a minimum frame rate of 72 frames per second, allowing for some dips when it comes to loading in and out. Mm-hmm. So so there's some specific, some requirements on that end, and you pretty much just go down the list and go like, okay, do we have 72 frames per second? Check. Okay. Do the in-game controllers hide when you pause the game? Okay, they don't. Okay, add that in. Check. And that's pretty much like from a requirement standpoint, that's the main thing you have to do. In terms of getting it on the store, it's about sort of meeting those requirements and then submitting it to Meta. And then if it's good, they release it. If not, they send it back to you and then tell you what you have to change.
And so that's kind of nice. There's communication.
Yeah, exactly. I think the process itself was a lot worse before I started. I think before COVID, it was a lot more walled off, and they were not good at communicating back with developers. But now they seem to be a lot more open to saying like, hey, here's what's wrong. And honestly, like as long as you don't violate any like their content like guidelines, and technically it runs and has all the requirements they need for like specific interactions like the menu button or things like that, then it's honestly pretty straightforward. Like I think I've seen a couple of people give like talks on it after the fact. After we did the process, people started doing talks about it, and I noticed that the process is pretty much just like, just read the forms, go all the way through. That's pretty much what you have to do.
Oh, that's kind of nice.
Yeah, on the side of specifically monetizing, like monetization inside those games, in terms of like requirements on that end, I'm still learning a bit more about, because our game itself isn't really focusing on like VR player skins or that kind of thing. We aren't really diving down that hole, although we are looking at potentially like the mobile player being able to buy like little hats or something.
I want to put a little hat on my bird.
Yeah, exactly. Just like something small. If you want to support the game, go for it. But we aren't diving down the kind of the full mobile road of monetization. But yeah, in terms of getting the game on the platform, that's a really good way to do it. If you find you're having difficulties with the Meta Store, you don't want to formally go down that way. SideQuest also has a way to put your game on their platform, and it's free, and they're pretty lax in terms of they're not as restrictive as Meta is.
Right.
So if you just need to get it on somewhere because you want to like a very basic concept that you want people to try out, then that's also a good platform if you don't want to do Meta. So I think I think overall it's just as long as you can get the technical requirements to work, then that's the hardest part. And then you just go down the list. So that's pretty much it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you submitted that, and then was there a lot of like nervous refreshing of the inbox waiting for a response?
I mean, yes, but that's pretty much any time I submit anything. They were actually pretty fast about it, which is strange because we released it like right before Christmas.
Oh wow.
So like it was the worst time to release the demo because we're like they're probably out of the office or they're gone. But no, I think it was like the 27th of December.
Really?
Yeah, they got back to us and the game was out. So yeah, it wasn't bad at all. So like that's the thing. They seem to be pretty expedited. I'm not sure how much of it is specifically human review, how much of it is like computer, like just
automated testing.
Yeah, automated testing. But yeah, like overall, it seems to be pretty straightforward. On that end, like you have like the Meta, developer, developer app, which you can have on a PC, which lets you manage alpha, beta, or some more storefront builds.
Right.
And so that's something where for testing specifically, and also getting specific people to come in and demo your game, just under through an email link. It's a fairly limited list. You can also do that if you need to distribute it and have people try it while still connecting it to that platform.
It's pretty it used to be such a black box, right? You just submitted it and then hoped you would get this golden ticket email that said, okay, you're in. It sounds like now it's a lot more flexible, a lot more responsive. They're kind of attuned to the process of alpha, beta, golds, right?
Yeah, exactly. They seem to be a lot better at that now, and I think it's because they realize that, now that they have the platform kind of solidified, they kind of have to go the Steam route, where it's okay, we got to make sure these technical requirements are met, but now the community kind of has to handle, what's a good game and what's a bad game, which is honestly better because then you just have more. I don't know. It's that's. I mean, overall, that just seems to be a more transparent system. But that's So overall, I think now it's honestly pretty straightforward. Honestly, the hardest part is just getting it technically to that level. But it's once you do, it's just paperwork.
So now the demo's on the MetaQuest store.
Yeah.
We're working on polishing. There's a release date sometime in the future coming up. So what is the final stretch? So you guys have made it further than a lot of developers do. So what does that final stretch look like?
The final stretch is a constant debate of whether or not if we release it too early, are we going to waste 3 years of work? And if we release it too late, are we going to lose any momentum that we have? And that's kind of been our debate, and that's been kind of controlling a lot of our decisions creatively. Is if we release this game in this state right now, will people actually enjoy it? And if the answer is anything but a resounding yes, absolutely, I don't see why there's any reason why they wouldn't, then it's probably not ready. And so overall, our general release date is still somewhat nebulous, just because we want the game to be in a spot that people really enjoy, and we don't want to throw out something that's I don't know, just people aren't connecting to, and it's
when you've spent so much time on it,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
It's such an investment.
Yeah, exactly. And the polishing at the end can be pretty hard in terms of obviously knowing when enough is enough. But I think for our game specifically, we know our core gameplay is fun. We know the combination of VR and mobile is fun. But in the end, I think it comes down to what can we do graphically, and then what are kind of these small elements we can add that can really make it even more fun. There's an element yesterday I added that I spent 3 or 4 hours adding a specific thing in the multiplayer, because our whole concept of the single player was basically getting to the end, grabbing this kind of core treasure and then leaving. But in the multiplayer, I guess we didn't quite have that, so I brought that in so the multiplayer one player could grab it. But then we decided, oh wait a minute, what if you died, you dropped the treasure? You have to, and it's along this kind of path, and so another player could grab it. Okay, well what if another VR player could grab the treasure from you off your belt and keep going?
You can do the Indiana Jones thing.
Yeah, exactly. Throw me the idol, I'll throw you the whip kind of thing. And so that was something where we added, where a fairly straightforward addition, nothing crazy complicated. It only took about 3 to 4 hours, but it's those kind of little things where we're oh darn, that's a really good idea. I wish you hadn't said that because now I have to make it. So, but I actually do appreciate it, and our game is filled with those kind of small additions where the lantern was one. It was I don't know, just these small additions that can just add to the immersion without being something that's way over the top and like, I don't know, something that completely destroys the scope of the game. So yeah.
Well, it's exciting because now that the foundation is built, you can focus on those little things, and get them implemented quickly and have these big kind of changes in quality and all of that stuff. It sounds like a fun time, but I wonder if there's any like anxiety the closer you get to the window that you're targeting, or are you guys just like enjoying the ride?
There's anxiety, but then we also have to just accept that like we're a fairly limited team, so it's like as I don't if I'm working and I'm tired at the end of the day and I fall asleep within 5 minutes and I get up and I keep going, that's probably the level I can do. Right. So we just kind of have to make it work on that end. So I think that's just the physical kind of like, I don't know, like we can only do so much, and so if our deadline is too ambitious, well, it's like, okay, accept it. We should really just make something that people enjoy and have fun with, because I don't know, it's one of those things where like after you release a game, aside from some very rare exceptions like No Man's Sky, if it ends up being like a dumpster fire when you first release it,
and then it's amazing years later.
Exactly, like or if it's worse, it's just boring. It doesn't gain any traction. It doesn't make a blip on anyone's radar. At least No Man's Sky had the publicity that people contrarians could jump in and go, maybe this game is amazing, and then they also built it up, and obviously they made a lot of improvements. But if it just turns out to be just like dead in the water, no pulse, no one's playing it, no one's talking about it, then it's like there's absolutely nothing you can do. And so I'd rather avoid that situation and swallow this discomfort of like not making this artificial deadline that we posed upon ourselves that with two people who are not particularly experienced in this field yet. So.
Right.
So I'm fine with being more malleable and accepting. Yeah, maybe I'm not as fast as I thought it'd be.
Games they always take longer than you think they will. But looking ahead to when you press the proverbial big red button, soonish here.
Yeah.
Are you feeling excited overall?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think like it's one of those things where like I enjoy playing our game. I really enjoyed seeing other people's reactions to it. Like that's the thing. Like the excitement I feel like you feel when you actually see people playing your game. You don't necessarily feel excitement when you're. I guess you feel different excitement when you're kind of like building it up, but overall I'm really excited for people to actually play it and just have this interaction, and that's thing if we get it right, then I feel like it'll kind of allow VR players to connect with people outside of their VR circle and really just kind of like create an interaction where people can actually like I guess genuinely connect and just have an experience they haven't really done before. So I feel like it's there are a fair amount of asymmetrical games out there, like I guess like the keep talking and
nobody explodes. Yeah.
So there's things like that, but I feel like this level, I feel like what we're doing will allow people to just kind of connect to VR players, and more or less have people experience VR in a way where they don't have to necessarily put on a headset, and they can still sort of be part of the fun. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm super excited to play it in the near future when it comes out. Depending on when the episode airs, please check out the demo. The demo is on the MetaQuest store.
Yep. Yeah, and then our website is fortuneonthefrontier.com .ca. Maybe we'll find .com down the line. Who knows? But yeah, fortuneonthefrontier.ca. If you just want to get any direct info about the game, if the game's released, it'll be on the Meta platform, and we look forward to you playing it.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you.
The intimidation of the case. It's because it's like just on the box.